Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming to join me this evening. Of course, my slides are not working. I apologize. I want to start out with some disclosures. Some sponsorship history I've had previously in the past, and I am on the Dental Advisory Council for Probiotic Health. It's always been a product that I've talked about, but most recently I was asked to be one of their advisors. So I must include that here. The content I provide, it's non-biased. It's based on my experience and current science. And I'm a dental hygienist. I'm also a registered dietitian. But just know I also come to you this evening with imperfections. I don't always eat healthy, and I sometimes forget to floss. So we're coming here, all welcome to learn new things together this evening and to also hopefully be inspired to grow in some areas. A big thank you to Viva Learning for allowing me to come into your homes, your offices, your back patio, your car, wherever you are listening this afternoon and or evening, depending on where you are, to share some time together. And a big thank you as well to our supporting sponsor this evening for Premier. I encourage you to go to their Facebook page if you're not familiar with their products and just kind of tool around and just like them on Facebook and get to know more about their products. One thing I'd like to encourage you to do, I do have a poll everywhere incorporated into my presentation. So I'm hopeful that works for us this evening because I'd really like to engage with each of you rather than just kind of, talking through my slides. So if you'll take a moment to download this app, it's polleverywhere.com. And it's going to be pollev.com. It's going to be Lisa Maloney 444. So when it pulls up, my questions will be there and you should be able to answer these questions. If there's issues, no problem. We will just kind of scoot right along and I will just kind of talk through the information that I kind of hope to gather from you all at that point. So everyone is unique and different. Like what works for one person may not work for another, right? That we know that with our patients in our private practice settings. One oral health aid we may recommend for one patient may not work for the next patient that comes into your office setting. So we have to tailor things specific to our own individual needs. I think it's important to point out that prevention, or just to emphasize, prevention does not equal perfection. It's the hallmark of our profession. It's something we talk about to our patients all the time in our clinical practices, our academic settings, but it's also important that we take care of ourselves, right? Prevention's also for us. So it's important to recognize that the term prevention is not synonymous with perfection. No one's perfect. Right? Perfection's an impossibility. I say this in the most supportive of ways. You're not perfect. I'm not perfect. And that's absolutely a-okay. We are, however, capable of being remarkable, amazing, and real. And in my opinion, perfection's overrated. It's funny that we all accept this to be true, right? But yet we spend so much time beating ourselves up or, staring at our flaws in the mirror, comparing ourselves to others, not getting the rest we need. Now, this doesn't mean that we should stop striving to be a better version of ourselves, like to eat healthier, to exercise more, to rest more. But remember, change is not a one-time event, right? It's an ongoing process. And we all have our limitations. We all have our weaknesses. That's what I said from the very beginning. I'm not perfect. I'm going to talk about things that I would like to see us incorporate into our daily routines to make us a healthier version of ourselves, but knowing that we all have growing pains. So I want to invite you this afternoon, to come as you are. I want you to leave any guilt or preconceived notions, personal views of imperfection at the door. And so, as I said, anything that you previously think about as far as what it means to be healthy, I just want us to come together and just kind of focus on some positive lifestyle changes that you can incorporate for you to promote in your daily lives that will actually lift you up rather than weigh you down. So I love this puzzle because it's kind of a way to kind of lead into knowing that there's no single path to health. It's kind of, you know, like a puzzle where we kind of have to move the pieces around until everything fits just right for us. And so our emphasis today is going to be on life-saving personal protection equipment. So what are things that we can do for ourselves? You need to have rest, you need to refuel, you need regular recreation, and you need to repeat this regularly. So we're going to talk about focusing on our sleep needs, being active more regularly, carving out me time on a, you know, a more consistent basis, and just relax, smile, and breathe. There's lots of measures people take for their physical health. And I love to see that oral health care is one of those. But these are the primary things, right? We are stimulated by time with our family and friends. We strive to eat healthier, get good rest, but it's not always as easy as it seems. So how do we get health problems? One of the ways we get health problems is we ignore our bones, right? So many of us, for whatever reason, perhaps don't consume adequate dairy. It could be ethical reasons. It could be personal reasons. Maybe it's just, you know, physiologically, dairy doesn't, you know, do well with you as far when you take in dairy products. But there's also non-dairy sources of calcium, as I show here on the image to the right, that we can utilize on a regular basis. And it's super important to know that while we're taking in those sources of calcium, it's really, really important to get some of that sunshine vitamin. Just going outside 10 to 15 minutes a day gives us adequate amounts of vitamin D. There's no need to take a supplement. And that helps that proper absorption of calcium that we're getting from those food sources in their diet. It's also important, you know, again, these non-dairy sources of calcium, it's important to point out they are actually important sources of K2. And so that K2 activates and what helps, you know, with the strong building of your bones. We supersize. How many of you are guilty of this, right? So when you're going to a fast food restaurant, I mean, it's so much more economical if you supersize something and then they're going to throw in a larger fry. It's only 25 cents more. So of course you're going to want to add that in. Anybody can relate to this? We think we're exercising enough. It's, you know, one of those things where you're kind of watching a home video, but you realize you're not really in the moment. You're checking things around you and taking more breaks than you're actually engaging in that exercise. Or we assume it's too late, right? You're like, oh my gosh, you know what? I put on these pounds over the years, or I haven't exercised since I was on the volleyball team in high school, or I ran track in high school. I can't do that. It's never too late to start a plan. So what we want to focus on is the health trinity. Okay, so we want to focus on essential PPE for us, and that's going to include regular exercise, nutrition, and getting adequate sleep. So health essential number one, what does everyone think that is? It is YOU, right? You have to take care of yourself first before you can take care of anyone else. So we've got those healthy habits, self-care, prevention. And I love how this comparison here between your cell phone and, you know, your rundown self, right? So think about when your cell phone is on its last legs, or as far as battery life, right? We start freaking out like, oh my gosh, I don't have any, my battery's going to die. We are more concerned about that than we are with getting to the gym or buying healthier food choices at the grocery store, or maybe even, you know, prioritizing getting more sleep. But self-care takes prioritization. I thought of this when I was on a plane, several months ago, and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to incorporate this into one of my talks. Remember, right, when you're sitting on the plane and they're going through all the procedures about if the plane should go down and everything that you should need to do. And she's talking about the oxygen mask is going to drop down. And if you have a small child or if you have anyone beside you, what do they say? Right? The most important part of what they say is make sure that you do this procedure for yourself before you help others. It's so important to make sure you're taking care of yourself, because if you're running on empty, if you're, not putting yourself as a priority, then you're not going to be that positive, energetic self that's able to care for those others as much as you would like to. So we're going to have a poll here to see if it works. And if it doesn't, then that's going to foreshadow how it's going to work the rest of the evening. Yay. Some of you have already been on here. Yay. Okay. So what self-care means to you? Love it. Scheduling time. So I want y'all to know the bold ones, the ones that pop up the biggest, you're saying it the most. Taking time, right? Healthy, myself, speeding, choices, personal, emotional, massage. Absolutely. I love this. Temple. So that's right. Our spiritual selves. Hygienists. Absolutely. That's right. We are all about self-care. We need to take care of ourselves as hygienists as well, right? Eating properly. Love this. Did you know that 85% of people don't take enough time for themselves? And then 1 in 2 people feel guilty for taking me time. I'm one of those, you know, like even if I were to sleep in 30 minutes, you know, 8 o'clock on a Saturday, I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, I need to be up. I need to be helping. I need to be, you know, I haven't seen my kids all week. So it does this amazing how these numbers about how we see the impact. This was actually an interesting article that was just published in the Journal of Dental Hygiene about mental health and self-care practices among dental hygienists. And the conclusion of this was that, you know, it's not something commonly taught in hygiene programs. And it's something that needs to be emphasized about the importance of, you know, burnout and the need for self-care and how we need to make time for those things in our lives. You got to put more me, right, back into your time. So it's an essential thing. So some tips on how to prioritize me time. You got to, you know, commit to making yourself number one priority every day. And even if it's just 5 minutes, you know, some suggestions I've seen is just while you're ordering a coffee, you know what, just kind of just breathe, take some breaths, take some simple breaths. Don't talk to others around you. Maybe just kind of take in you and what's going on with you at that time. Schedule me time. I don't know about you all, but if I don't schedule something, whether it be a date with friends, whether it be, you know, taking some time with my kids, if it's not on my calendar, it does not happen. So literally, this is an example of what I put on my calendar, schedule me time, wherever, you know, and that me time could be just laying in bed, hitting the snooze for 5 minutes. I know it's a bad habit, one of my favorite ones though, and just kind of lay in bed and linger. And maybe just kind of think about things. Maybe, you know, if you're spiritual, it's a time to reflect on your faith, just, you know, just some prayers or just some deep breathing. So scheduling me time, it doesn't have to look any specific way, but it's time dedicated to you. And then using it to your advantage. One suggestion was, for example, you know, you carving out time to exercise. While you're exercise, make it like a 2-for-1 deal where you're doing something you wanted to do, like exercise, and then maybe kind of, you know, mapping out some plans or some things of what you're wanting to do in your life, or kind of visualizing things that you're grateful for. So making it a positive experience. So in addition to me time, self-care, you know, carving out special time for yourself, we've got to exercise. And it doesn't mean that you have to join a gym. It doesn't mean that, you know, you have to do a formal class. It just means you've got to move more. You've got to, you know, get your body moving and looking for alternatives to squeeze more movement into your day. I always like to add humor. And I think this humor, you know, we use a lot of excuses sometimes, and we love to blame things on our family members, right? Because it's just in our family history, the reason why these things happen. But it's oftentimes that we don't take the opportunity to, you know, put exercise into our lives. The chat feature's disabled, so we're going to skip past this one. But I want to know, how do you feel about exercise and working out? Do you look forward to it? Do you dread it? Love-hate relationship, 100%. I love it immediately. I look forward to it. I don't exercise. Okay. All right. So we're between A and C. Some say I don't exercise. All right. We're still hanging tight with love-hate. I hear y'all. I actually started seeing a trainer like 2 years ago. So Monday mornings and Thursdays, I see a trainer. My Monday morning is at 6 a.m. So that means I've got to get up at 5:30 to be there. And When I'm done, I'm so happy. But oh my gosh, just to get there, I'm angry. Why do you exercise? Is it for your cardiovascular health, to lose weight, to maintain your weight, stress relief? Absolutely. That last one is my reason. I've been going for nightly walks, just power walks, just to, it's either a glass of wine or walk. So I'm going to go for a walk. So that stress relief, it really does. It releases those endorphins, those natural endorphins. But yeah, I see many of you want to do it to lose weight, cardiovascular health. How do you feel about your body after exercise? Does it boost your self-image, or do you get discouraged because your efforts aren't paying off? Yeah, boost mine too. I get discouraged. My efforts aren't paying off. Neutral, kind of just check the box to get it done. Yeah, I know it is discouraging, right? The way I look at it sometimes, though, is I am the same person when I walk back in the door that I was when I walked out the door, but it just makes me feel better. So I don't know what it is. It does release happy endorphins for me. But these are spot on how most people feel. So thank you for sharing. I think it's true. Most of us, don't want to work out because you hate your body. You want to work out because you love it. And you always want to start where you are. Use what you have, do what you can. That means, like I said, you don't have to join a gym. You don't have to have, organized classes. I remember my early 20s, I had a step bench that I'd have in my living room, and I would have two 14 and a half ounce cans of vegetables that I would use as my weights. And I had a roommate at the time who thought I was insane. I'm dating myself, but I would actually listen to Jane Fonda videos, or actually watch them and work along with Jane. And, you really, yes, we may have a love-hate relationship, but rarely do we say, I really regret that workout. So no one ever. No, after I do legs with my trainer, I actually send him notes that say, I don't like you. But, you really don't regret it. I think what's important to know about, like when we talk about physical activity and diet, they're important because of weight. It doesn't matter your size. People, we always say, like, well, why are you exercising? If someone's small frame, why are you exercising? You don't need to lose weight. It's about being healthy. And so, we'll talk about it a little bit later on. The reason I don't like the word diet is because D-I-E, die. That's kind of how we feel when we're on a diet. And a diet is simply, by definition, foods that we eat. And so it's being more mindful about the foods that we eat and just incorporating activity in the form of regular activity, exercise into our days. So how much weekly aerobic activity do you think adults ages 18 over should get for substantial health benefits? Do you think it's 30 minutes 5 times a week, moderate intensity, 25 minutes 3 times a week, vigorous 40 minutes? Some of you think it's all 3. Everybody's kind of going into that 30 minutes 5 times a week. Okay. What I'm going to share with you is that it is all 3 of these. All right. Exercise, you can work out at a moderate intense rate, 30 minutes, 5 times a week. Absolutely. Or you can do 25 minutes, which is going to be more vigorous intensity. So, right, we do less minutes, but we're more intense. And then 40 minutes, 2 times a week, a lot more, again, more moderate, vigorous, so longer time. So when you're doing that moderate activity, it's going to increase your breathing and your heart rate somewhat, whereas that vigorous aerobic activity is going to greatly increase that heart rate and breathing. And we know that when we get our heart rate up to our optimum level, that it's helping us to be most efficient, in increasing our cardiovascular health. This is some great, things that you can pull from the American Heart Association. And this is kind of emphasizing what that poll was asking. I love these 2 images here because I want to emphasize all throughout our conversation this evening is that's what exercise is. It's about incorporating it into your life, making it work for you. Does it have to be, again, you don't have to join the gym to do it. It's the only exercise, machine that you need is you to make it happen. So if you're short on time, it's also okay to get active 10 minutes 3 times a day. So short bursts, it's been shown that physiologically, if we challenge ourselves, if you would walk for a good fast-paced 10 minutes 3 times a day, that this would actually help you and benefit you just as much as well. You want to limit your screen time, but if you want to watch and work out. So I encourage you to go to the American Heart Association website. They introduced this series during the onset of the pandemic, but now they have streaming series, and they've got some really great ones that they're free and that you can, pull them up and do them whenever you like. I always try to incorporate everything that we're talking about into an oral health standpoint. And so, what it actually shows is this study here was, it demonstrates that those individuals with moderate and severe periodontitis was independently associated with those individuals, or those sedentary, specifically we're looking at men here, those sedentary males aged 45 to 65. So it's saying the more we exercise, it can not only benefit our bodies, but also our mouths as well. So moving more and sitting less. Again, this little image to the side is showing, many ways. So when you're grocery shopping and you're hating being at the grocery store, you're pushing that cart for 30 minutes, you're burning calories. Dance around your living room like nobody's watching, for an hour. Just 10 minutes, it's fine too. But you're burning calories. That drudgery of vacuuming, you're burning calories. So there's so many ways that we can incorporate activity in our daily routines and get credit for it. So we talked about self-care. We talked about exercise. Now let's transition to our eating habits. I love this quote by Hippocrates: "Let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food." So most of us, when we're talking about eating, we need to move our thought process about eating from, again, diet, versus just kind of mindful eating and just kind of creating some healthy habits for ourselves, eating with our mind, not our emotions. Sometimes I will poll the audience and ask if you're an emotional eater, and usually it's, unanimous that we are. But that mindful eating, it helps you enjoy, take smaller bites, chew your food, sit at the table, meaning not standing at the kitchen counter, not walking around eating. Put your utensils down between bites of food. Don't ever eat straight from the packet. I know myself, if I'm eating from a bag of chips, you're next thing I know, I'm eating every little crumb that's at the bottom of it, because you want to portion it out, or just kind of get a little amount and then eat. If you feel full, save it for later. That whole mindset of clean the plate club is forgotten years ago. It's one of those things where you just enjoy it to satiety. They say that you want to eat for 20 minutes. So you want to enjoy, take your time eating your food. If you still feel hungry, you just kind of rest in between. And then perhaps if you are still hungry, kind of peruse what you still have available. Maybe choose some more vegetables or a fiber rich, maybe not going for the proteins. Removing distractions. So, get off your computers, get off your phones, just kind of enjoy the moment and eat. Taste your food. Pay attention to smells, taste, and aromas. And we need to remember that being healthy and fit isn't a fad or a trend, right? It's a lifestyle. It's a bad diets. I could spend so much time talking on those. Just some facts for us as dental professionals. There's many, but it's something to be aware of with your patients and asking them questions about fad diets and how, if they've noticed any changes, if they're on a keto diet, if they've noticed any changes since they've been on perhaps a vegan, they changed to all vegan diet. So again, it's more of us not discouraging our patients from the diets, or even ourselves, if these are things that you also are utilizing within your eating patterns. Just being mindful of some changes that can happen with our mouths when they're on those things. What we see with the protein diet, because it is a softer diet, we are going to see more bleeding points and halitosis related to keto breath with those patients. I know I'm not the first person to tell you this, and we want to think there's a magic bullet, but there isn't, and I always say, set lifestyle goals. So, if you do need to lose some weight, be realistic, right? Don't set goals of where your weight was back in high school, when you were even at your tiniest. life has happened. Where are you now? So setting realistic goals. And once you get to that finish line, having a plan for how you're going to maintain it. Because that's what we do, right? I'm going to lose 30 pounds. Then you get to that finish line. And what happens is you don't have a plan. We don't have a backup plan. And when you don't have a backup plan, then that's when failure can occur. And that's kind of disappointing to us. So it's like, once I get there, this is what I'm going to do to maintain it. So you always want to have a plan in place. And as I said, I personally don't like, live it versus diet. I don't like the word diet. It's all about balance and moderation. And it's 80-20 is a rule, a very, very good rule of thumb. And what that means is 80% of the time, you want to incorporate healthy eating habits into your regimen. 20% of the time, you want to allow yourself those splurges. Don't turn that, homemade chocolate chip cookie away if that's what you want. If you're at Starbucks getting a coffee and you want a piece of the pumpkin bread, allow that to be your splurge, but you have to make sure you're balancing it with your weekly diet and making sure that you're getting, lots of good, nutrients in the diet from your fruits, your vegetables, your lean proteins, whether it be meat-based or plant proteins, your low-fat dairy, and your whole grains throughout the rest of the week. So my philosophy is always skip the diet, just eat healthy. Just knowing, right? One bad meal is not going to make you fat the same way. One good meal is not going to make you skinny. So we fault ourselves sometimes, like, oh my gosh, why did I eat that? I know it, that wasn't healthy for me. Again, it's what is healthy. And that's why I kind of asked this question in my next slide. What does healthy eating mean to you? And we don't have the chat feature, so you can't answer me, but that's just something for you to answer right now. Jot it down on a piece of paper. What does healthy mean to you? It means a lot of things. And I will tell you, as a dietitian, it's really, kind of hard for me because there's so many things. I mean, there's all these different diets. I have to stay on top of so many things in order to kind of guide individuals as to, which ones may not be as beneficial for them from a whole body perspective. But when we talk about eating, it's a necessity to eat, right? But to eat intelligently is an art. So it's kind of difficult to navigate. And oftentimes we have to, I know for myself, I have a 12-year-old, I have a 13-year-old. My husband travels oftentimes for work. I'm a full-time working mom. So if I don't map out meals, to have Monday through Thursday, that's my cooking schedule. The weekends, my kitchen closes. But so I have to map out meals or else, it can fall apart. But one of the things you want to think about when you're choosing foods for yourself, right? It's kind of like when you go up to the gas pump and you're looking at the prices. Oh my gosh, that regular gas is a little bit cheaper. That extra is like, oh, okay. So when I equate that extra to maybe some little healthier foods choices, Supreme is going to be clean eating, just making sure we're just eating great sources, all of our macronutrients, balanced diet. But, we're not fueling our bodies properly, then it's not going to work at optimum level, right? So sometimes we look at that and you have to decide, what are you willing to give up, right? An arm, a leg, both. So fueling your body properly is key. Immune function, your body can't work same way your gas isn't going to work on fumes, neither is your body. I know for myself, when I'm going for a morning workout, if I didn't, maybe if I had a busy day the day before, I only had 2 meals, maybe a few snacks, I can tell when I'm working out because I just don't have the energy or the output that I would had I, kind of eaten more regularly throughout the day, more balanced. So a key we want to think about in our diets is choosing nutrient dense versus calorie dense. So again, I kind of swing towards eliminating the word diet and just looking at your diet from this perspective. So nutrient dense, just to put in perspective, like 4 apples, these are going to be nutrient dense versus a Snickers bar. Snickers does satisfy you, but it's not going to be as, again, quick calories. And you kind of see the difference over here as measuring between the two. And another way to kind of put it into perspective is when we look at shifting, right? So from some of these high calorie snacks to some of these nutrient dense snacks. I love carrots and hummus together. There are a whole grain version of fig Newtons, but again, maybe some fresh fruit with some just Greek yogurt, some plain Greek yogurt, maybe even some granola. That granola, from a dental perspective, is going to be more ketogenic, but it adds a little bit of something to it. But again, these comparisons kind of allow us to kind of see some ways we can sub out some of these higher calorie foods and shift to more nutrient dense. So sugar becomes a problem, right? This is the one thing that we talk about with our patients all the time. And what we need to make them most aware of is those added sugars in the diet. Added sugars is simply what it says. It's sugars that we add. And so, 1 teaspoon of sugar equals 4 grams of carbs. And so we know that a lot of times, men and women, we overconsume, all of us. 23 teaspoons is the actual amount of added teaspoons that is on average that we consume in the US, whereas it's recommended that women consume 6 teaspoons, and men consume 9 teaspoons. This is the World Health Organization also said they're wanting to cut it back to even more, reducing, that intake, especially for kiddos, making sure that they're cutting back that like 3 teaspoons, which is really, really hard to do, those added sugars, because for most kids, just having a cup of orange juice in the morning or some of those sippy drinks, they get more than their fair share of those added sugars. But in 2020, it was required. I think they started the transition in 2018, but it's actually on these food labels. So I encourage you to be mindful of reading food labels and encouraging your patients, because, you want to make sure that you're looking, those added sugars are going to be the biggest culprit. Just for ease of calculation, I always just look at total carbs divided by 4. But you see with this example to your right that there are some dietary fiber included in that, which, that's going to be your good sugars. Those are going to be the ones that don't break down as readily in the body. But not only just from a ketogenic concern, but from a weight concern. And we know that, obesity's more than tripled since the early 60s. And so those extra calories equate to extra pounds. And sugar comes in so many forms, right? It's in disguise in so many ways on food labels. I encourage you to look at your favorite products and just count how many times sugar occurs in some of perhaps packaged or canned products. These are all the many names that sugar may show up on your label. So it comes, as I said, in many different names. And I'll have patients that'll say like, oh no, I don't use sugar. I use agave nectar, or I don't use sugar. I use honey. It's still sugar. It's just a different form of sugar. And there's surprising sources. It's, all throughout. Different. And pasta sauces is where I see it. My husband loves Prego, and I always make him buy a different pasta whenever I'm going to use something, if I'm not making it from scratch, because I can taste the sugar in it so much. But everything, that you see here listed, this is an extensive list, has hidden sources of it. So why is it a problem? Right? Moderation is fine. Moderation is fine for everything. But the problem is too much of it can lead to metabolic problems. Fructose is going to go straight to your liver. So that fatty liver, which we kind of associate with cirrhosis of the liver, with alcohol, actually can happen with too much sugar, because when that fructose goes to the liver, it turns those droplets of fat into charges. It turns into droplets of fat known as those triglycerides. And we know with those increased triglycerides, that's going to lead to lower HDL, and we want that cholesterol, I call it the happy cholesterol, we want that to be higher than your LDL. I refer to that as your lousy cholesterol. So again, cutting back on those added sugars in the diet would benefit greatly. And this equates to periodontal health as well. The next 2 studies that I'm kind of just to portray the evidence, it does show that a high frequency of that consumption of added sugars is associated with periodontal disease. Does it cause periodontal disease? No, but it can exacerbate the situation. And we see those bleeding points in class and periodontal bone loss. It correlates with individuals whose diets are high in sugars. Also looking at adolescents who had the periodontal disease. And same thing we saw here, where that high level of added sugar intake was associated with a greater level of periodontal disease in adolescents. So ways to add more sugar to our diet. Less sugar, but more flavor. We like to add cinnamon to like our coffee. So when you're when it's brewing, so you kind of put your coffee in and then sprinkle some cinnamon on it, or maybe a touch of vanilla, cinnamon to your cooked cereals and veggies. So that it doesn't add sugar, but it does add some more flavor. And everybody loves an app, right? So to manage your sugar, there's actually an app for that, Fujicate, which was created by a parent who wanted to lower sugar consumption. Enables you to track what you eat and drink throughout the day. And it also helps to make wiser choices. Is it 100% accurate? Absolutely not. But it is one of those things that helps you gauge your sugar wherever you may not have been mindful of before. And it's definitely a great tool for you to share with patients, especially teen patients, but your adult patients, all ages, quite honestly, just to be able to track their eating patterns, sugar intake. So we know with our, is your enamel as strong as you are? We see this advertisement in many of our professional journals. And what we know is, we're a lot stronger than our enamel sometimes just because of the foods that we're constantly exposing ourselves to. So it's really important when we're eating that we are eating protective foods, fresh fruits and vegetables, there's dairy products, fats and proteins buffered. When combined with a carbohydrate in the meal, they buffer the breakdown or the creation of that lactic acid, and they minimize that. Also, when we look at our patients from a whole body perspective, from blood sugar levels. So we've got fats and proteins, when you're combined with that carbohydrate, it doesn't spike that blood sugar as high, or it kind of keeps it at a more consistent level. Xylitol, I always recommend this to our patients. Specifically, I like to recommend, and also make sure you're giving them, certain specific sources. So Icebreaker's Ice Cubes is a gum with xylitol, because xylitol is the first ingredient. Vibes, Trident has now put out, and that also has xylitol as the first ingredient. Mentos Pure Fresh. You have to tell your patient Pure Fresh, because if you just say Mentos is the first ingredient is sugar, versus Pure Fresh, which the first ingredient is xylitol. And there are some candies available, but a lot of them, we have to order them from Amazon, and I don't know some of those products. So maybe, some of you, if you want to drop them in the Q&A as a chat, we can just kind of throw it out there when I pull those up and we talk about them. But definitely, those antimicrobials, sealants, just protective things for our smiles. And as I've said, again, just shifting away from reducing those empty calories, increasing those nutrient dense foods, and then moving more. And my philosophy is, if you can, to shift away from the scale, again, if you're one that just needs to get on that scale, I would encourage you to do it like once a week, same time, and wearing the same thing, which usually your birthday suit's going to be, give you a better idea, and be most consistent every week. So we always hear the term eating clean. So like, how do we come clean? What does that even mean? It basically means direct from nature as possible, right? Whole foods, free of additives, colorings, flavorings. Does that mean we only need to consume organic? Absolutely not. I know there are, many different viewpoints on this, but you do not need to eat all foods organic. There's something called the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. You can go, they update it every year annually. These are the ones for 2021. So these are ones most specifically, if you're going to spend your food dollars, that you would want to focus in on. So those would be those Dirty Dozen that you would want to incorporate. Clean 15. These are ones, don't waste your dollars, right? Mushrooms, broccoli. It's funny, mushrooms is always on the Clean 15, but I don't know if y'all agree. I always think they look really dirty. So I always kind of disregard this. I don't buy organic, but I definitely, doesn't mean because these are clean 15, they're not going to be dirty. You still need to rinse them, but it means there's not as, it's free of pesticides and they're just additives. But many of you have seen, like when you're in the grocery, the organic bananas, you don't need to spend your food dollars there. Because those, unless you're going to be eating the peel, which most of us are not, is oftentimes an extra 20 cents that it is just 20 cents. So it makes you feel better, yes, but at the same time it's just extra cost that's not necessary. But I always like to focus in on, I guess it's probably the oral health care provider in me, but the inflammatory diet. So the dietary inflammatory index. So I like to look at foods from a pro-inflammatory and anti-inflammatory perspective. And this study that was done, is kind of emphasizing that all chronic inflammation is associated, with a variety of chronic diseases, and that, as we know, includes periodontal disease, right? And so that dietary inflammatory index, it's used to assess inflammatory potential of just an individual's overall diet. And this particular study looked at, different types of diets and plans. And they looked at fast food, Mediterranean, macrobiotic diet. You're not going to be surprised that fast food diet didn't win out, right? So as expected, it was the macrobiotic and the Mediterranean meal plans, which exhibit those anti-inflammatory potential, just the greatest. And it, again, just including more of those, less of these pro-inflammatory foods in our diet, which is what we know, right? Sugar sweetened drinks, refined grains, sweets and desserts, processed meats, saturated fats, nutrient poor, calorie rich, ultra processed foods. And then those that are, in excess of our energy needs. And then incorporating more of those anti-inflammatory foods, your rainbows, your colorful fruits and veggies, beans, lentils, high fiber whole grains, adding an array of herbs and spices, healthy fats, your olive oil, your vegetable oils, your fatty fish, such as salmon, nuts, walnuts is a great source of omega, your seeds, your avocados, and then those helpful unsweetened beverages, green and black tea. I don't know if any of you follow Andrew Weil, W-E-I-L, first name Andrew, but if you want to Google him and it's something you're interested in knowing about more, he's got some great information about anti-inflammatory diet that he speaks on. So healthy eating, right, doesn't just help our bodies. It's also eating healthier reduces risk of caries, specifically those coronal caries. This was an article that was published last February in JADA in 2020, and they're looking at the association between coronal caries, decay, missing and filled teeth, and this healthy eating index scores. And what they found, those individuals who had a greater compliance with the dietary guideline, making sure they're eating a balanced array of all the different food groups, had a lower prevalence of that untreated decay. So bottom line is, obviously we want to eat more whole fruits, those greens and beans, reduced added sugar intake for those less untreated risk of coronal caries. And it was also recommended dietary counseling for caries prevention by dental professionals, could be incorporated as part of that comprehensive care that we provide to our patients. Water, right? We need to make sure we're keeping ourselves hydrated. I've got some water right here with me. It's like I have to, make sure. It's kind of like me time. I also need to make sure I'm filling up my water cup regularly. But one of the things I think we need to be aware of, so we can also make our patients aware of too, is a lot of these, bottled waters aren't always safe for our teeth, right? So here's the website you can go to, a comparison chart, something you could print, laminate it, just to have readily available in your office, and just for you to be aware of too, about some of these products that actually do have lower pH, even though it's, seemingly kind of harmless water. Oh, I'd love to ask you some questions right now when when it comes to like hitting the snooze. How many of you are actually, getting adequate rest on a regular basis? It is a biological necessity. So, we can't use the chat feature here, but I usually want to know, like, how many hours of sleep do you get most nights? What I usually find, there's some of you that only get 4 hours of sleep. Some of you will raise a hand less than 4. Some of you I'm envious, because there will always be, a small handful, but in that 8 or 9 plus. But for most people, it's 6 to 7. I didn't even include 7. 6 to 7 hours is the average. And why is that important for us? It's important because we get enough sleep, right? Enough sleep actually helps us manage our hunger. Ghrelin, which you see here, is a hormone produced mainly by the brain that sends a signal to our brain to feel hungry, right? So it plays a big key role in regulating calorie intake and body fat. So the levels are going to increase when dieting as a means of protection. So when we see, low ghrelin is going to be a normal appetite, high leptin equals satisfied after eating. So someone who's getting enough sleep is going to have low ghrelin and high leptin. If you're not getting enough sleep, you're going to have higher ghrelin, makes you hungry, and lower leptin. You're not satisfied. So maybe think about a night, maybe you haven't, gotten good rest. Maybe think about a night perhaps you went to a cocktail party. Maybe you had a few too many cocktails. You didn't sleep well that evening. You ever notice how you're so much, you're so exhausted the next day, but you're also a lot hungrier too. And it's not like a bowl of kale is something that's going to satisfy you. The food choices that we want to eat when we're a lot hungrier too are going to be those that are going to be more calorie dense rather than those that are nutrient dense. This is an excellent website to go to if you want to find out, this is just kind of a chart of recommended sleep. Just, for most adults, ages 26 to 64, 7 to 9 hours is the recommended hours of sleep. Drops down just a little bit more as we get over age 65. So 7 to 8, but that 26 to 64 range is the one you see young adults through that, through 64. 7 to 9 hours is usually the amount that is really good for us to get optimum sleep for our immune system, for our brain function, for our mood, for our mental health, right? So it's going to be really, really important that we are getting adequate rest. But using this bedtime calculator to kind of help you see how much you need. And there is actually, I can find evidence, and it's always so much fun when I'm talking on a topic like, okay, we'll see where periodontal disease falls into this. And it does find, in looking if you're not, those individuals not getting adequate rest. In fact, we do see more severe periodontal disease in those who didn't, are not getting adequate rest. So just kind of summing everything up, we're going to look at, a healthy life. We want to eat a variety of foods, create your own plan. I'm not talking about My Plate tonight, but I encourage you, if you've never looked at the Choose My Plate, it's where it's the food guidance system. We've gone from a triangle now to a plate, but they update it regularly. And there's lots of great resources on there to kind of identify your own eating plan. Watching your portion sizes, aiming for balance of all the groups. Eating smaller meals more often, and then just kind of keeping healthy choices readily available. I know for me that if I've got a bag of chips that are closer to me than a bag of, some fruit, I'm going to go for the salty over, or the bag of chips, the snacky foods. Our stomach shouldn't be a wastebasket, right? And one of the things we need to think about is that I always love this. The food you eat, it can either be the safest and most powerful form of medicine or the slowest form of poison. So we want to, take time to eat healthy. Because as Edward Stanley says, sooner or later, you'll have to find time to eat healthy, or you'll have to find time for illness. And we don't have time for that. So adding more color into your daily routine. Look at all these different, just nutrients, phytonutrients is what they're called, found in, all the colors of the rainbow, the lycopene, beta carotene, vitamin C and flavonoids in your yellows, folate, calcium in your greens, your indoles in your lutein, your anthocyanins in your blueberries and your grapes, your resveratrol in your raspberries, your plums, and your glass of Merlot. And then your fiber, right? So many great nutrients. So you want to eat more of these, right? And get off the sofas. You want less solid fats and added sugars. You want to minimize those in your diet. You want to read labels for those added sugars, the fats, the things that don't contribute to our healthiest self. Because as research has shown, there's also obviously a relationship between saturated fatty acids and periodontal disease. And, the conclusion was that, yes, absolutely, consumption of higher levels of saturated fat has an increased risk and influence on periodontal disease, and increased evidence of periodontal disease in individuals. So in closing, what we know is it's never too early or too late to work towards being a healthy issue, right? We started out in the middle. I said, we always assume it's too late. It never is. You got to start where you are and go from there to be the best, healthiest version of you, whatever shape or form that looks like. So I've provided some resources for your patients and you. There's just some different apps. If you want to find a dietitian, you go to eatright.org and it'll actually say locate a dietitian. Understand those food labels. This is a website you can go to. And then these are some great bookstores. Just if this is something you're wanting to, find out more information about and have more interest. So with that, I will thank each of you and leave you with thoughts of, making sure that you have your life-saving PPE. You're eating healthy, you're exercising, you're getting adequate rest, and you're making more me time so that you have more smile time. So with that, I want to say thank you. And these images of me not being so perfect. The one in the middle, that was my 50th birthday. I set a goal of running a marathon. I look like I need to be like a convict or something in this picture. The one to the left, actually I did my first bike. I don't bike, but I went on a bike trip to Spain. So that was fun. There was good food and wine involved. So I encourage all to try. And the one to the right over here, this is me at Thanksgiving last year. So a proud moment. So with that, I'm going to stop and I'm going to take some time for Q&A. Let's see. So the question was, do you believe use of Splenda artificial sweetener is detrimental to our overall or long-term health? I get asked, not just about Splenda, but all sweeteners. I get questioned. Again, going back to one of the things I talked about earlier, all in moderation, I believe that it's okay. The problem I see with, and I'm not going to say so much sucralose, which that's what Splenda is all the sweeteners, is the overconsumption of it. Aspartame is the one that's highly integrated into all of our food products. And so it's not so much that it's so harmful, it's that it's in everything. So it's at increased risk. We're at increased risk because of consuming those. Oftentimes too, there's so many studies and it's mixed. There's nothing that has like a definitive outcome, but that, artificial sweeteners actually increase weight gain. And, I will say there is the science to that is that, individuals indeed can gain weight because it's kind of tricking your brain. It's tricking your brain to think that your body's getting fueled up. And so that pancreas, is getting ready to take that insulin. It's up into those cells. And then there's nothing to take up into the cells because there's no food, it's actual fake sugar. So in that respect, I think overconsumption can be detrimental. But, just in small increments, I wouldn't say so. But the problem lies when we are consuming too much. Another thing, when we talk about weight gain, I always ask people too, I think, so when you're having that Diet Coke, what are you eating with it? So oftentimes we offset, we kind of rationalize that we're consuming artificial sweeteners, there's no calories, and then consuming other things with that. Awesome. I'm getting lots of great positive comments. All right. And these others look like they were answered. Everybody's just saying thank you. So thank you guys. You made my day complete too. Somebody said it was a great way to end my workday. So this was a great way to end my workday too. So does anybody else have anything earth shattering before we go? There's one more. Let's see here. Just a lot of thank yous. I have grateful hearts. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Well, here is my email address. So if anything, any information I provided tonight that you want to share or reach out, please do. I love hearing from you. I love hearing ways too that I can make my courses, better for, practitioners out in practice. So most definitely, don't hesitate to reach out to me if there's something you want to know about yourself personally or a question or, related to private practice. And again, I want to thank Viva Learning this evening for having me as a speaker. And I again, another big shout out to Premier for supporting me this evening and all my professional programming. They have amazing products, and I encourage you, as I said, to reach out to their website, like them on Facebook, and learn more about them if you don't already integrate them in your practice.